Some children grow up believing danger is normal, not because danger was everywhere, but because protection was absent. They learn early how to read rooms, how to soften their voice, how to anticipate moods before they arrive. They become careful, observant, and unusually mature, not by choice, but by necessity. While other children were held in moments of fear, this child learned to hold themselves. While others were reassured, this child learned to endure. And endurance, when learned too young, quietly reshapes a life. This story is not about blame, it is about understanding. About what happens when safety is missing during the years when safety is supposed to be guaranteed. About how the nervous system adapts, about how strength forms in the absence of shelter, and how that strength can later feel like a burden. This is the psychology of the child who was never protected. Some children do not remember a single moment when they felt fully safe. Not because danger was constant, but because protection was inconsistent or absent entirely. Safety, for most children, is not something they think about. It is something they assume. It exists in tone of voice, in predictable routines, in the certainty that someone will intervene when things go wrong. For the unprotected child, this assumption never forms. Instead, there is an early awareness, often wordless, that no one is reliably watching over them. No one is guaranteed to step in. No one is clearly responsible for keeping harm away. This awareness does not arrive dramatically. It settles quietly. The child notices they must be careful. They learn which emotions are allowed and which create problems. They sense when adults are overwhelmed, distracted, or unsafe themselves. They stop expecting comfort before they consciously decide to. Without protection, the world feels louder, sharper, more demanding. The child becomes observant in ways that feel unnatural for their age. They read facial expressions the way others read stories. They track moods like weather patterns. They adjust themselves constantly, volume, needs, presence, to avoid making things worse. This is not emotional intelligence born of curiosity. It is vigilance born of necessity. Often these children are described as easy, quiet, or mature for their age. They don't ask for much. They don't cause trouble. They seem self-sufficient. What is rarely noticed is what this self-sufficiency costs. The child learns early that expressing fear does not guarantee comfort. That showing distress may be ignored, minimized, or punished. That vulnerability does not reliably lead to care. So vulnerability becomes private, needs are felt internally but not spoken aloud. Pain is endured silently. Hope is tempered with caution. This does not mean the child lacks emotion. It means emotion becomes internalized. They may still feel deeply, but alone. In moments of threat, there is no instinct to seek help. There is only the instinct to endure, to freeze, to comply, to disappear emotionally if necessary. The body learns this before the mind does. The nervous system adapts to a world where safety is uncertain. Alertness becomes the baseline. Relaxation feels unfamiliar, sometimes even unsafe. The child's inner world becomes highly controlled because the outer world cannot be. This early adaptation is intelligent. It keeps the child functioning. It allows them to survive environments that do not meet their developmental needs. But it also quietly shapes identity. The child begins to believe that being low maintenance is virtuous, that needing less makes them safer, that asking for help is risky. They may not consciously think these thoughts. They simply live them. Over time, the absence of protection becomes normalized. The child stops expecting it because expectation itself feels like a setup for disappointment. They do not feel neglected in words. They feel it in absence. In the absence of reassurance, in the absence of someone noticing when something feels wrong, in the absence of repair after emotional injury. This is how the child learns without safety, not through dramatic moments, but through repetition, through patterns, through what never arrives. And because this learning happens so early, it becomes invisible to the child themselves. It feels like personality, like temperament, like strength. Only later, much later, does it become clear that what looked like independence was actually adaptation. What felt like maturity was often emotional self-protection. What was praised as resilience was sometimes quiet loneliness. This chapter is not about diagnosing damage. It is about naming experience. Because the first step in understanding the child who was never protected is recognizing that their behaviors were not flaws. They were solutions. Solutions formed in an environment where safety could not be assumed and survival depended on learning how to live without it. Protection does not always fail through violence or cruelty. Sometimes it fails quietly through absence, inconsistency, or overwhelm. A child who is unprotected may live in a home that appears functional. Food is on the table, clothes are clean, school is attended. But protection is not just physical, it is emotional. It is the assurance that someone is reliably present when the world feels unsafe. It is the knowledge that fear, pain, and confusion will be met with care. When protection is missing, the reasons are often complex. Parents or caregivers may be overburdened, working multiple jobs, struggling with illness, or managing their own unresolved trauma. They may love the child deeply yet lack the emotional resources to create a safe environment. Sometimes protection fails due to unpredictability. The home may oscillate between calm and chaos. The child learns quickly that safety is conditional, dependent on moods, schedules, or circumstances beyond their control. Other times, protection is absent because the world itself is dangerous. Neighborhoods may be unsafe. Schools may fail to intervene. Extended family may be unreliable. In these cases, the child learns early that survival requires self-reliance. Even subtle failures leave marks. A question left unanswered, a hurt unacknowledged, a minor incident that should have been noticed but wasn't. Over time, these absences accumulate. They teach the child to assume responsibility for their own safety and well-being. They teach vigilance, anticipation, and self-containment. The brain adapts. The nervous system becomes finely tuned to potential threats. The child's senses sharpen. The child becomes hyper-aware of patterns, moods, and possible dangers. These adaptations are not conscious choices, they are survival mechanisms. Yet the child cannot articulate the lack of protection. They cannot always name the absence of safety. It is felt in the body, in the quiet tension, in the small adjustments made to avoid conflict or harm. The child learns rules without instruction. They learn which emotions are safe to show, which words will be met with attention and which will be ignored, which behaviors attract care and which bring silence. Protection may also fail through inconsistency. A caregiver may respond with care one moment and withdraw the next. The child quickly internalizes the unpredictability. They cannot rely on reassurance, they must create their own. This inconsistency shapes expectations. The child comes to believe that stability is not guaranteed, that love is conditional, that safety is fragile. It is here, in the absence of reliable protection, that the child begins to develop patterns that will follow them into adulthood: self-reliance, emotional vigilance, and a quiet but pervasive sense of responsibility for the world around them. These patterns are intelligent responses to an unsafe or unpredictable environment. They are not weaknesses but survival strategies. Yet without recognition, they may later be misinterpreted as stubbornness, aloofness, or emotional distance. Understanding where protection failed is essential for understanding the child's inner world. It illuminates the origin of patterns that feel like personality but are in fact adaptations. It reveals why safety was not assumed, and why learning to trust it later is neither simple nor immediate. The unprotected child survives, but survival alone cannot replace presence, and the consequences of that absence ripple quietly into every future relationship, every moment of self-reflection, and every attempt to let someone in. The child who is never protected does not simply grow cautious, they grow different. Not in temperament, but in the architecture of the nervous system itself. Survival leaves marks invisible to the eye, written in the wiring of the brain and the tension of the body. From the earliest years, the nervous system is designed to learn from the environment. Safe, consistent care tells the child the world is predictable, threats are manageable, and it is okay to relax. Absent that care, the system adapts differently. Hypervigilance becomes baseline. Every sound, glance, and shift in tone is scanned for potential danger. The brain prioritizes threat detection over play, over curiosity over rest. Sleep may be light, movement restrained, and attention constantly outward rather than inward. Emotional suppression becomes a skill. If expressing fear or need has historically gone unanswered, or worse, caused punishment, then holding emotion and becomes protective. The child learns to tolerate distress silently, to soothe themselves when comfort is unavailable. Dissociation may emerge. A subtle detachment from experience allows them to endure moments that feel unsafe. The body continues to respond alert, tense, aware, while the mind floats just beyond the immediate pain. This is not a flaw. It is a clever adaptation. Neuroplasticity ensures these adaptations are reinforced over time. Repeated vigilance, suppression, and hyper-awareness wire the brain to anticipate threat even in relatively safe environments. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, remains sensitive, often overactive. The prefrontal cortex, which regulates response, must work harder to calm the system. The result is a body and mind always on alert, even when no threat is present. This chronic state of activation creates both strength and fatigue. The child develops extraordinary observation skills, emotional acuity, and self-reliance. They notice moods, tensions, and potential danger before anyone else. They anticipate problems, manage outcomes, and navigate instability with skill that surpasses peers. But there is cost. Rest feels unsafe. Pleasure feels uncertain. Relaxation triggers subtle fear. The nervous system interprets stillness as vulnerability. Attachment patterns are affected as well. The child may crave connection yet struggle to trust it. The same vigilance that protected them early now questions intentions, tests reliability, and calculates risk in every interaction. Memory is also shaped by this adaptation. Early experiences are encoded with heightened emotional intensity. Even minor neglect or unpredictability becomes magnified in recall. These memories inform adult expectations. The world is fragile, care is conditional, safety is uncertain. Later in life, these physiological adaptations manifest in ways that may feel like personality traits: self-reliance, perfectionism, emotional reserve, and extraordinary ability to endure stress. Yet these traits are double-edged. They provide survival and competence, but they also carry loneliness, mistrust, and a constant subtle tension in the body. Understanding the adapted nervous system reframes these patterns not as deficits but as remarkable strategies for survival. They are not the child's fault, nor a reflection of inherent weakness. They are evidence of resilience, born from necessity. This chapter matters because it highlights the biological and psychological roots of the child's later challenges. To understand the adult who struggles with vulnerability, intimacy, or rest, one must first understand the nervous system that learned to survive without protection. In the next chapter, we will explore how this survival-driven strength can become a source of inner conflict, fatigue, and resistance in adulthood. The child who was never protected grows strong, too strong sometimes for anyone to see the cost. Strength becomes a quiet companion, a survival mechanism that follows them into adulthood. This strength is often praised. They are called resilient, mature, dependable. They carry responsibilities others shy away from. They endure challenges without complaint. They appear capable, even extraordinary. But beneath the surface, there is strain. The very skills that allowed survival, hyper-vigilance, emotional restraint, self-reliance, become burdens. They limit spontaneity. They make vulnerability unfamiliar. They teach the body that rest is risky and asking for help is unsafe. Trust becomes difficult. The adult remembers unconsciously that protection was unreliable. To let someone in fully feels dangerous. To rely on others feels like a risk. Even intimacy is approached cautiously, measuredly, with an internal ledger of safety and danger. Over-independence is common. They do for themselves what others do for them. They anticipate needs, plan for worst-case scenarios, and solve problems before anyone notices. They carry invisible loads that no one else carries or even asks about. This endurance is exhausting. Sleep may be restless. Thoughts circulate endlessly. The mind monitors, calculates, and predicts. The paradox of strength emerges here. It protects them, but it also isolates them. It demonstrates competence, but it hides fragility. It allows survival, but it obstructs ease. Shame often accompanies this strength. They notice others resting or receiving care and feel undeserving of the same. They assume their needs are less important or worse, risky to express. The mind interprets generosity towards self as indulgence or weakness. Emotional intimacy is filtered. They may love deeply but cautiously. They may support partners, friends, or children, while struggling to accept similar support in return. They measure everything through the lens of reliability. How safe is this? How consistent? How likely to be withdrawn? Conflict arises when the world does not mirror their vigilance. Others may seem careless or unaware. Their carefulness feels unappreciated. Their quiet suffering feels invisible. Yet even when fatigue is constant, there is resistance to change. Old survival strategies feel necessary. Letting down guards feels impossible because the child's original learning persists. Safety is conditional, protection cannot be assumed, vigilance is essential. This tension, the simultaneous pride in strength and recognition of its cost, creates a unique inner life. They are capable yet weary, prepared yet worried, enduring yet lonely. Understanding this inner conflict is vital, because the very strengths that allowed survival in childhood can become the source of struggle in adulthood. The self-sufficiency that once protected now limits rest. The caution that once ensured safety now hinders connection. In this chapter, we recognize that strength and burden coexist. We honor resilience without ignoring its price. The adult who was never protected lives with both. And the journey ahead, the journey of realization and healing, begins when they notice the cost of carrying survival as identity. The next chapter will explore the subtle moment when these patterns begin to be questioned. The turning point where survival begins to meet awareness. The realization does not always arrive dramatically. It rarely comes with fanfare or clarity. More often, it whispers, arriving quietly in a moment of stillness, fatigue, or reflection. The adult who was never protected may suddenly notice something. The patterns that once safeguarded them now feel constraining. The hyper-vigilance that ensured survival feels heavy. The emotional restraint that kept them safe now isolates them. The over-reliance on self that preserved life now blocks connection. This moment often follows exhaustion, physical, emotional, or relational. It may appear after a conflict with a loved one, when support is offered but cannot be accepted. It may emerge when they pause in solitude and realize how tense their body feels even in safety. Or it may surface when observing others' ability to rest, trust, or receive care without fear. In that moment, grief surfaces. Quiet, subtle grief for the unprotected child, for the years spent learning to endure alone, for the vulnerability that was never nurtured. There is mourning for moments that should have been safe but weren't, for needs unmet, for fears navigated without guidance. Awareness accompanies grief. The adult begins to see that their behaviors, once necessary for survival, are no longer always adaptive. The self-reliance, vigilance, and emotional restraint are understood not merely as temperament or strength, but as survival strategies honed in absence of protection. This realization can bring relief. Finally, the adult can name the patterns. Finally, the survival mechanisms are seen for what they are. They were strategies, not failures. They were shields, not flaws. But it also brings discomfort. To see these patterns is to confront their persistent influence, to recognize how deeply ingrained they are, to face the challenge of undoing habits that were essential to life itself. In some cases, the realization is sparked by relationships. A partner, friend, or therapist offers care that is reliable, consistent, and gentle. The adult notices how unfamiliar it feels to trust fully, how effortful it is to accept support, how the instinct is still to self-protect, even when danger is absent. For others, the turning point emerges internally. A quiet observation: I have carried this my whole life, and perhaps it no longer serves me. This thought, simple yet profound, begins the first stirrings of change. It is in this space between grief and awareness that possibility exists. The patterns are recognized. The body is noticed. The mind begins to question the necessity of constant vigilance. This moment does not erase the past. It does not remove the nervous system's adaptations. It does not immediately allow for trust or relaxation. But it initiates choice, a choice to explore different ways of relating, feeling, and being. A choice to experiment with safety, even tentatively. A choice to consider that the adult self can exist without carrying the full burden of the unprotected child. This realization is both fragile and profound. Fragile because the nervous system remembers. Profound because awareness is the first step toward integration. It is here, in this turning point, that the journey shifts from endurance to possibility, from survival to presence, from protectionless childhood to a self that can begin to learn safety, slowly, gently, and on its own terms. The next chapter will explore how the adult learns to build that safety within themselves, to integrate strength with tenderness, vigilance with rest, and endurance with presence. Learning to feel safe is not immediate. It does not arrive as a sudden revelation or a simple shift. It is a gradual, deliberate cultivation, an art of allowing what was once impossible: rest, trust, and care. The adult who was never protected carries habits that once kept them alive. Hypervigilance, emotional restraint, and self-reliance are hardwired. These adaptations, though once necessary, now create tension. Relaxation feels unfamiliar. Trust feels risky. Receiving care feels undeserved or even dangerous. Integration begins with noticing these patterns without judgment. The adult observes the tension in their body, the automatic thoughts that monitor others' behavior, the constant calculation of risk in relationships. They learn that awareness itself is the first step toward recalibration. Small experiments in safety are transformative, allowing someone else to take responsibility for minor tasks, accepting a compliment without deflecting, pausing before responding to perceived threat. These are not trivial acts, they are rewiring decades of survival strategy. Boundaries become essential. Learning to say no or not yet protects the emerging sense of self. It does not reject care but frames it in a way that feels safe. Safety is nurtured, not imposed. Trust unfolds slowly. The adult begins to recognize which people can be relied upon and which situations genuinely support their well-being. They practice discerning risk from past habit, distinguishing old fears from present reality. The nervous system, once trained to remain tense, learns to tolerate calm. Breath, posture, and subtle moments of mindfulness teach the body that stillness can exist without danger. Sleep may deepen. Relaxation becomes permissible. Pleasure can be experienced without guilt. Emotional intimacy is explored cautiously. Sharing feelings, asking for support, allowing vulnerability, all are approached incrementally. The adult may stumble. Old instincts resist. The body may tense. The mind may doubt. But over time, the repetition of safety begins to shift internal experience. The adult learns that protection can exist outside of crisis, that care can arrive consistently, that their own presence can be a container for vulnerability. Integration also involves compassion. Acknowledging the child who was never protected, the adult honors the strategies that kept them alive. Hypervigilance, restraint, and self-reliance were intelligent responses to real conditions. They are not weaknesses to erase, but patterns to balance. Healing does not require perfection. It requires gentleness, awareness, and the willingness to allow oneself to inhabit safety slowly. Strength coexists with rest. Self-reliance coexists with trust. Vigilance coexists with presence. Over time, this creates a new internal rhythm. Life is not about constant defense. It is about discernment, presence, belonging. Safety becomes internal, not just external. The adult begins to carry a sense of protection within themselves, rather than always searching for it outside. The nervous system recalibrates. The child who survived learns to exist without constant alert. The adult learns that life can be met without armor. This chapter is about integration, the weaving together of survival and presence, strength and tenderness. It prepares the ground for the final reflections, honoring the child who endured, recognizing the resilience formed, and embracing a life where protection, care, and trust are finally possible. Even after decades, the child who was never protected remains present, not as a fragment to discard, nor as a shadow to fear, but as a quiet companion, a witness to both survival and transformation. The adult carries this child gently now, rather than letting them drive every choice. The vigilance that once ensured life is softened into awareness. The self-reliance that once protected becomes discernment. The emotional restraint that once saved them is balanced with tenderness. Looking back, it is clear that the absence of protection shaped profound capacities. The child learned to observe, to adapt, to endure. They developed emotional acuity beyond their years. They mastered resilience in its purest, unacknowledged form. Yet the cost was subtle and cumulative: tension, fatigue, mistrust, and the quiet loneliness of self-reliance. These were not flaws, they were signatures of survival. Now, recognition becomes the first act of healing. The adult begins to witness the child's endurance with compassion. They allow themselves to mourn the years lived in guardedness, to honor the resilience that made survival possible, and to acknowledge that being unprotected shaped their understanding of the world. Safety becomes a practice rather than an expectation. Trust is learned incrementally, in gestures both small and profound. Boundaries are drawn with care, not fear. Rest is permitted without guilt. Pleasure is reclaimed as a natural right, not a conditional reward. The child and adult coexist in a new balance. The child's intelligence, strength, and vigilance inform wise choices. The adult's awareness and discernment create space for connection, joy, and rest. The nervous system learns, slowly, that protection can be received, not only earned. Time itself softens the edge of memory. The past, the years of absence, the moments of unprotected survival does not vanish, but it becomes context, not verdict. It informs rather than confines. Relationships are approached with careful courage. The adult knows the child within, but they also know they can now ask for care. They can allow others in without fear that need will be unmet. They can be seen without dissolving into anxiety. They can trust that safety is not always fragile. This reflection does not romanticize suffering. It does not suggest that survival alone is enough. It simply honors the journey, the quiet, steady work of living with absence, and the slow, deliberate reclamation of presence. The child who was never protected remains, but they are no longer alone. They are held by a self that understands, protects, and nurtures. They are carried forward with awareness and compassion. This is the lasting lesson: the unprotected child is not erased. They are integrated. They are witnessed. They are allowed to rest within the adult who has finally learned what it means to feel safe. Strength and tenderness coexist. Vigilance and trust coexist. Survival and presence coexist. And in that coexistence, life begins to unfold, not as a series of threats to endure, but as a landscape where safety, connection, and belonging are possible, where the child and adult can finally move forward together, quietly, courageously, and wholly.